Have a nice day, everyone. The topic that was assigned to us is all about the Lingua Franca project, year 1999 to 2003. By the way, we are three reporters in this topic, but first I'll be the one to discuss. I know some of you have an idea on what Lingua Franca project is, but to those who haven't a clear and enough understanding about this topic, without further, let's get started in knowing deeply more on what Lingua Franca project is. What is Lingua Franca? A language used for communication between speakers of different native languages. We all know that language is very important for communication, especially in delivering message by the speakers and to the listeners, and also listeners and to the speakers. And also it is used for communicating into the different native languages. We all know that language is a structured system of communication. It is a primary means of communication of humans as well. This can be conveyed through speeches, signs, or even writing. For shortcut, lingua franca is a bridge language. It is also known as a common language or link language. On a global scale, the current largest lingua franca is English, but there are other various lingua franca on a regional level and on a national level. Why English is a current largest lingua franca? Due to the fact it is a common language. All people around the world know how to speak English, even as Filipino people. However, if there is a global lingua franca, there is also a national level lingua franca and a regional level lingua franca. Here in the Philippines, our national lingua franca is Tagalog and English. But there are many regions in the Philippines also. We have NCR, CAR, or Cordillera Administrative Region, Mindanao, ARMM. In Region 1, there is Ilocos Region, Region 2, Cagayan Region, like that, and more. So, when Ilocano meet someone from a Visaya region, so their national language possibly is Tagalog or English. They will be using that two languages in order for them to communicate well. It means that lingua franca we use depends on who you are speaking to. If we speak someone in a region, we can understand them, so we use our regional lingua franca. However, when we're talking into different regions, we might use the national lingua franca, which are the Filipino or the English. It sounds very complicated, diba? But basically, speak the language who that can help communicate unto the person the best.
Lingua franca is an example of original lingua franca in the French language in Africa. So, the French language in Africa, which is Iwondo. The Iwondo is a lingua franca used in Cameroon Central region, including the capital Yaoundé, often in a pidginized form known as Iwondo Populaire. So, however, Cameroon is one of the African countries where French is most widely spread and Iwondo status may be coming under that threat. So, the next is another similar situation in the Philippines where we have two lingua francas kind of, or they mix the two lingua francas sometimes. So, where we have Tagalog and English, and those are used as the lingua francas between people from the different regions of the country. So, the official language of the Philippines is Tagalog. Magina siya ang atong language and the national lingua franca. Kay tungod min language man siya sa capital city Manila and the surrounding region. And it is the foremost widely spoken local dialect within the nation.
To have more ideas on what is lingua franca, we indicated different examples. First is There are many languages spoken in a particular area or amongst different ethnic groups, and they need a language to communicate. Here in the Philippines, we have a various ethnic groups. If that certain group of people cannot communicate and to the other group of people properly, they need a language to have a communication well. They probably use our national lingua franca, which are the Tagalog or the English. Number two, there is a trade between two different countries that have no common language. If this will be happen, for them to have a trading properly or precisely, they might be use common language, and that is English lingua franca or English language. Number three, at a professional conference for experts from different countries who have different native languages. For example, here is the America and the Philippines. If American people go to the Philippines to have their conference, they probably use the common language or the global lingua franca, which is the English, because they probably can't speak properly Tagalog. So if they can speak it, then it is a bonus. But they commonly use the common language, which is the English.
So let's proceed to the next slide. Why do we say lingua franca? The term lingua franca itself comes from the name of a language that was spoken in this way in the Mediterranean region for hundreds of years. One language source from 1632 referred to this language as Bastard Spanish. So sometimes there are both national lingua francas and more local lingua francas within a country. So if we take the example of Philippines. So in the Philippines, there's a region where Ilocano is their main language. So if someone from the Ilocano speaking region meets someone from, for example, the Bisaya speaking region, then they will probably use the national lingua franca, which is Tagalog or English, or they can use both of them. But if that same person meets someone from the Ilocano speaking region who speaks a different language, like a minority language, then they will probably use that local language, which is Ilocano, as their lingua franca. So, the lingua franca you used depends on who you are speaking to. If you speak to someone in your region, you can understand them, so use that regional lingua franca. If you speak to someone from a different region, use the national lingua franca. So it sounds all kind of complicated, but it means speak the language that helps you communicate with that person the best. So to wrap up and clarify, a lingua franca is a language that is used for communication between the speakers of different native languages.
Since we are done understanding on what is lingua franca, now we're going to proceed to our main topic, which is the Lingua Franca project in year 1999 to 2003. The Lingua Franca Education Project, or LFEP, mark that word, was launched in year 1999 by Department of Education Secretary Mr. Andrew Gonzales, FSC, and mandated the use of, mark this, Cebuano, Ilocano, and Tagalog. These three languages are the sole language of instruction for the first three grades in pilot school that year. These languages were chosen because they are the most spoken language in the country that time, in the year 1999. So what are those? Cebuano, Ilocano, and Tagalog.
Next, In 2000, the Presidential Commission on Educational Reforms, or also called PCER, recommended the use of the lingua franca or the mother tongue as the sole medium of instructions for first grade in all schools. So it means that mother tongue is the lingua franca that they will going to use as the sole medium of instructions for the first grade levels in the year of 2000.
As Senior Undersecretary for Programs and Projects at the Department of Education, it raised the number of mother languages allowed in the first 3 grades of the Lymphatic Filariasis Elimination Program or LFEP in 2001, like Bicolano. So, how many languages does Bicol have? So, there's have 12 different dialects but ang ilahang origin language gyud is ang Bicolano. Hiligaynon or Ilonggo, Samarliti or Waray, Kapampangan in Pampanga, Pangasinan. Ang Pangasinan na siya kanang tulo ka language nga gigamit, Ilocano, Filipino, English, but ang ilahagyong mother language is ang Ilocano. Maranao in Lanao del Norte or Lanao del Sur. Maguindanao and Tausug in Zamboanga were added to the list also. In 1999, the Department of Education's Bureau of Elementary Education conducted a study known as the Lingua Franca Education Project. So, in 1999, Department of Education Secretary Andrew Gonzales, FSC, started the Lingua Franca Education Project, or LFEP, which mandated the use of Cebuano, Ilocano, and Tagalog as the sole languages of instruction for the first 3 grades in pilot schools. Next is Department of Education, Culture and Sports o DSCS Memorandum number 144 is 1999 Lingua Franca Project and continued until 2003. So this Memorandum number 144 is 1999 Lingua Franca Education Project, say 1999 to 2000, which aims to define and implement a national bridging program from the vernacular to Filipino and later English to develop initial literacy for use in public schools.
Lingua Franca project aimed to defining and implementing national bridging program to develop initial literacy and numeracy skills. Lingua Franca project is really helpful because it implements a national bridging program. We all know that we have a barriers or a gap in terms of talking to someone, especially when we speaking another language that is not common. So to break that gap, there is what we call initial literacy, wherein it looks at the time or stage of individual to learn that expected them to do or speak some basics or acquiring the process of the skills in a particular field such as reading first, writing or speaking properly. And also, all subjects in grade 1 were taught in lingua franca including reading, readiness, and beginning reading. Lingua franca project aim also to taught especially the grade 1 to include that reading and readiness or other type of reading to be acquired.
Filipino was taught orally. So when we say Filipino was taught orally, it is because English and Filipino, or when we say Tagalog, are the official languages of the Philippines. Then English is taught in schools and used as a medium of instructions as early as kindergarten. So it is because it was originally imposed by Western colonialism, and it is used, and academia has been criticized as discriminatory to regional and indigenous language other than Tagalog, so which are not generally used in higher education and have therefore not been allowed to develop an academic languages. Oral English was introduced in second semester. Second, elementary school students as young learners are the best place to learn English as foreign language. Then, it will help the students easier to learn English as the main subject in the next school levels. So based on what I have said earlier, it can be seen that English is important to be taught at elementary schools.
So for the next bullet, schools were given the option to select which lingua franca to use, Tagalog, Cebuano, or Ilocano. So all learning areas in grade 1 will be taught in the lingua franca which is widely spoken in the community of where the school is located, which may be Tagalog, Cebuano, or Ilocano. So it means that if your school is located in the Ilocano speaking region, then you can use the Ilocano as your medium of instructions or lingua franca. Why Ilocano? Because Ilocano lingua franca is the language which is widely spoken in your community. Next one, reading in first language developed self-confidence and facilitated smooth transfer of learning from first language to second language. It means that learning a first language helps you or to boost your self-confidence, and in order for you to learn the second language easily.
Lingua franca has its main goal, and that is to make children functionally literate in their local language by using it as the medium of instruction. Lingua franca project has this goal for us to aware that local language is our foundation or a basis. We must give value on it. Instead of setting it aside, we must use it and give importance on it. So the person behind its Lingua Franca project really a motivation that it is okay to use and adapt other languages, but don't take for granted our own local language, embrace and have it, as we love the person who gives value on our independence.
So study shows that learned in their first language before learning a second language were successful. So it means that based on what I've said a while ago, that the children needs to learn their first language before learning a second language. Why? Because if the children learn their first language, then it will be easy for them to learn a second language. Moreover, learning a second language helps or provides them an advantage which were not taught in the first language.
In conclusion, Filipino students have a better chance of becoming bilingual. They can be fluent in both English and Filipino. However, the use of the mother language should be encouraged in the early years of schooling, such as preschool, grade 1 and grade 2, because it can help children develop their critical thinking skills.
Filipino students have a better chance of becoming bilingual or fluent in both Filipino and English. However, the use of the mother language should be encouraged in the early years of schooling or preschool, grade 1 and 2 can also help children develop critical thinking skills. Furthermore, bilingual education benefits us since it makes learning a second language easier for youngsters and also for us as students, provides a platform for early diversity, and also gives youngsters prospects for the future. Additionally, to communicate and prevent conflict, people require bilingual and bicultural skills. We are convinced that the bilingual education, in addition to teaching languages, may help people understand other cultures. Then, as a result, every school should provide multilingual instructions to its students. Here are our references. Do you have any questions or any clarification? If you have comment or raise your questions on our meeting. So, thank you everyone for listening and God may always bless you.